got a letter to read to us?
I do. Okay, so we have a letter because this has just been kind of. Oop, I've got feathers floating around. Um, this is one of those questions that came out, and I decided that I would bring the letter out again. So let me set the context. I'm in an F-4 squadron. I'm at Nellis. I've missed the Gulf War, by the way, so this is still an issue. We're the only op squadron at Nellis, and I was one of the youngest instructors at Nellis, I think, and I'm not sure I was an instructor at the time, but I was when I became an instructor, I was the youngest instructor on the base, and I would brook no down talking. I don't care if you're a 422 dude or you're a weapons school guy or whatever. You're not going to talk down to anybody in the op squadron, particularly if that somebody is me, because I'm just going to rise up. And the intel guys used to refer to me as the alligator because they said I would sit in a briefing room with nothing but my nostrils and eyeballs showing, and the next thing you know, you'd be eviscerated. I don't know what they're talking about. Anyway, so Captain Eric Best, F-16 fighter weapons school instructor, pens an article in, of all places, a Navy magazine. So in the 90s, the Navy tactical magazines were, as much as I hate to say it, awfully good. And they also had pictures, which made them way more readable for your average pilot. And Captain Best had written an article, which I'm going to read you an excerpt from, that just pissed me off. And since he started this ball rolling in writing, I had to answer it in writing. So I'm going to read it. It's dated 10 September 1993. It is to Captain Eric Best from the Wild Weasels. Subject, gross written buffoonery. And it starts out, 1. For your consideration, the following is reprinted without permission from Aimpoint, Naval Strike Warfare Review, Volume 9, Issue Number 1, Winter 1993, page 47. Conclusion. Today, the F-16 is one of the most widely deployed fighters in the world. Therefore, the likelihood is high of flying composite operations with the F-16 in the next exercise or war. With its versatility and capability, the Viper has rapidly become the F-4 of the 1990s. Because of the newness of some of these missions, many F-16 units are starting on the ground floor. Magnum, Laser-On, and Fox 3 are relatively new in the vocabulary of many Viper drivers. Despite this fact, we flex well to any situation, learn fast, and should always be a positive factor in the overall mission outcome. This went over like a lead salami. And so I started writing. Paragraph 2. In case you haven't noticed, the F-4 is the F-4 of the 1990s. Any comparison between that worthless piece of flying FOD that you buzz around in and the mighty Phantom II is insulting to the many men who have fought and died in the F-4. The Phantom II was flying defense suppression and air superiority missions over Hanoi, dropping LGBs with a paved knife on the Paul Doomer Bridge, and flying CAS in the Iron Triangle, to mention just a few, long before your flying toy was a wet dream in the minds of the Texas congressional delegation. Paragraph 3. The misplaced belief that the F-16 is a true multi-role fighter is no doubt a contributing factor to the common occurrence of Vipers, spearing rocks, dirt, trees, other aircraft, and large bodies of water with the pitot tube. The F-16 was designed to be a cheap day VFR fighter, and no amount of training or money will ever be able to overcome that limitation. If any aircraft today approaches the potential for comparison to the F-4, it is another two-seat, two-engine McDonnell Douglas product in Air Force service. Paragraph 4. Any attempt to inflate your basement level status by comparison to what is, quite simply, the best jet fighter ever built and the defender of the free world for over 30 years is a pitiful attempt to boost your ego by comparing yourself to better men flying a better aircraft. The F-4 has flown more types of missions in a superlative fashion than the F-16 could ever consider. We would all love to see the day when an F-16 lifts off with 24 Mark 82s and 4 air-to-air missiles on a combat mission. And the F-4 became the world's best ever distributor of big parts with 1950s technology AIM-7Es AIM-9Bs, and cannon without having to wait for the introduction of the AMRAAM. Paragraph 5. As if 4 weren't enough. The simple fact of the matter is that the dismal combat performance of the F-16 in the Gulf War is directly responsible for the continuing service of both the F-4 and the A-10. The F-16's inability to deliver its inadequate ordnance load accurately resulted in the need to reattack targets, endangering men needlessly and wasting resources. It wasn't the F-16 that ran a SAM Killing 8 shift through the most intense air defenses ever encountered by the Air Force over Baghdad on the first night of the war. The only reason Magnum is even in your vocabulary is because the dwindling numbers of Phantoms led to the conclusion that an F-16 on the wing is better than nothing at all, but only just. Paragraph 6. The only people that have not caught on to this glaring inadequacy of the F-16 are the people that drive them. The only foreign customer stupid enough to purchase the F-16 since the war has been Taiwan, largely because, 1, they placed their order long before the war, and 2, they had no real option because they were not offered the F-18 and don't already operate the Phantom II. Even your own manufacturer bailed out of the business as soon as they realized they could no longer rely on general and gross stupidity to sell their flying failure. Paragraph 7. To wrap this up, we greatly resent the misguided and faulty comparison of the F-4 Phantom II to the Fighting Falcon, the only fighter aircraft in history to be named after a second-rate college football team. Any resemblance between the McDonnell Douglas Phantom II supersonic all-weather fighter bomber, mostly bomber, and your miserable single-seat, single-engine, computer-designed, fly-by-wire composite airframe, software-driven, day VFR, ice-fod-sucking, weak-dick, bubble-canopied, target-missing, ground-impacting, non-hook-raising, auto-trimming, piddle-pack-ejecting, G-locking piece of flying pork-barrel politics is limited to the fact that both aircraft have an F designation. Your aircraft should have a blue stripe painted around the nose and for trading use only stenciled on the fuselage. And you can go to the club tonight knowing that your article and this letter occupy a significant place in our Doofer book. Signed, the Wild Weasels. So, every pilot and EWO available in the squadron who wasn't deployed signed that except for Tom Pfeiffer. I was my flight commander. And Tom for 2 reasons. 1, because he was the only one left in the squadron with any level of maturity and brains. And 2, because he's an Air Force Academy graduate and didn't like the fact that I refer to the Fighting Falcons as a second-rate college football team. Everybody else signed it. It went in the Doofer book. We sent the original to Captain Eric Best. Issue over. Issue not over. We have McDonnell Douglas tech reps in the squadron. 2 of them. Like many Phantom squadrons, they have a fax machine and a phone book. So they faxed that letter to every McDonnell Douglas address they had in the book. And then for good measure, they started sending it to General Dynamics because it was GD and not Lockheed that was building the airplane at the time. So if there's any claim to going viral before the internet, I've got it. It was all over the place. I got calls. Chris Chili calls me from in theater, an Audubon phone. Bad connection. He's calling me from the theater and he's chewing me out for poisoning the relationship between the F-4 guys and the F-16 guys because Spangdahlem had mixed squadrons. And I care not one bit. And if you look for the F-4 of the 1990s, occasionally it can pop up on an internet search, but some of those have been altered. So you will note, uncharacteristically, there's no profanity in that letter. So if you see one with things inserted, that's not the original. This is the original file that I've been carrying around for almost 30 years.
Did Captain Best get back to you?
Captain Best apologized for his reference and left the base. And I saw him again when he and I were both colonels. And Eric Best, F-4 in the 1990s, how's that going for you? And he just did not have the time and the inclination to deal with me in any capacity. Which is,
That's a valid response.
It's a valid response.